Welcome everyone, I'm Shea with Curate Soul and I am here to share August's bhavana with you. So just a reminder that bhavana is often translated as theme or energetic, and it's our focus that I do in month-long segments. And we've been exploring the third puruṣārtha. So this whole year, 2023, I'm exploring the four aims of mankind, or the four desires of the soul, the puruṣārtha, according to Vedic text. We opened the year exploring dharma, our responsibility or our purpose. We then dove into artha, which is the means or the tools or even wealth that allows us to fulfill our dharma or responsibility here in this human form. And last month we began exploring the third puruṣārtha, which is kama, pleasure, desire, longing, even fellowship. And we spent last month kind of defining what kama is, how that shows up for us as individuals in this form here, but also as well as along our spiritual path, and how that relates to our dharma and our purpose, as well as the tools and the support and the means that we have, and how that the pleasure and desire that we are seeking is to know that unchanging place within ourselves, that place within us that knows and knows that it knows, as Swami Rama has been quoted saying. And so again, it's this divine part of us, whatever we may call that, God, goddess, spirit, soul, divinity, self. So however we relate to that, it's this deeper desire to know that part of ourselves. And yes, it can relate to these kind of external desires, the desires that we seek to have pleasurable experiences by being in fellowship with community, company of loved ones and friends, the desire to dance or make art or to create, whether it be poetry or music or another life. So that is also kama. And this month I want to focus on the relationship of kama to Ayurveda. In between, kind of in the middle of each of these 3-month explorations of the puruṣārtha, I kind of sandwich in Ayurvedic concepts. I am always teaching through an Ayurvedic lens, whether I am speaking to that or not. But I really like to speak to it kind of in that middle part of each exploration of the individual puruṣārtha. So we're in the Ayurvedic section of pleasure, of kama. So in Ayurveda seeks to establish a sense of balance and well-being and health through living cyclically, to honoring our natural cycles, and to relating to the 5 elements that compose everything around us as well as within us. So the 5 elements of air, space, fire, water, and earth. And so this idea of health and pleasure shows up in that when we physically do not feel well, it is hard for us to experience pleasure. That's because our awareness or our attention is kind of focused on that sense of not being well, not feeling optimal, something being slightly off or wrong or whatever it may be, whether we're sensing a physical ache in our body, whether we're dealing with maybe a seasonal cold or something that is more chronic in nature. It can be physical symptoms, but it can also be even a sense of something that's more subtle, lethargy, lack of energy, a feeling of being stuck or confused, a lack of clarity. So all of this is considered ama, toxins, or a block in Ayurveda. And these blocks can come again on a physical level as well as an energetic level, so subtly within the mind, the body, and the spirit. And Ayurveda seeks to dissolve these mental, emotional, and physical blocks so that we can create a sense of health and well-being. And when we do so, we then are able to really begin to experience pleasure, the pleasure of being healthy, of feeling comfortable in this human form, in this physical form, but also in mind and spirit. And so again, when we're suffering from dis-ease, whether it's acute or chronic, we're uncomfortable at some level or other. And when we're uncomfortable, we're not experiencing pleasure. We actually may experience desire, but it's often this gripping. So it's this holding tightly, and it's this desire to feel better. And again, desire is not negative, good or bad in itself. It's the attachment that often comes along with the desire that creates the suffering. When we become overly attached, when we're holding so tightly, when we're chasing after that desire, and that desire may or may not be fulfilled, it's that chasing, that longing, that holding so tightly that creates the discomfort, the dis-ease. And so again, just understanding when we're having that experience of desire or pleasure that's from that place within us that is spirit-led, we could say, as opposed to externally led or ego-driven. It's a completely different experience. If you recall last month, I think that I mentioned that what we truly desire is that knowing, that unchanging part of ourselves. And when we're established in the heart space, in that true unchanging place within, then we begin to see clearly what desires are leading us down our dharmic path and supporting our responsibility and our purpose here, compared to those desires that keep us detached and separate from ourselves, that keep those veils, those illusions of being separate from that divine part of ourselves that creates the suffering. So when we are living with our natural cycles meaning we're following the cycles of the seasons, of day and nighttime, rising when the sun rises, going to bed or slowing down when the sun sets, eating when our digestive fire, our agni, is at its optimal level, instead of eating when the digestive fire is a little lower, that would then create this sense of sluggishness within the body and the mind. So honoring these cycles, being true to those cycles, creates a sense of health and well-being and vitality. Again, in that state of health and vitality, we sense pleasure. We don't get confused with this longing or desire or this seeking or gripping for something that we don't have. We understand that it's already established within us. So Ayurveda teaches us that pleasure, something like a beautiful scent, say a rose, the scent of a rose, can help ground us in stability or cool our mind, as well as open our hearts. The sense of hearing, so hearing music can delight, and the sense of taste, tasting something delicious, can often create a sense of inspiration. Ayurveda and the 5 elements are related to our 5 senses, and so we use our 5 senses to experience pleasure. So our senses are directed outwards, and we are always searching kind of our external environment for pleasure, for something that we may desire and that sense of pleasure. But also the yogic teachings share with us that turning our awareness inward, so redirecting our energy away from these external desires or these external stimuli, redirecting the 5 senses inward, then helps us create this stillness, this quietude that allows us to really understand and see clearly what it is that we truly desire. What is our heart longing to experience. And this practice of turning our senses inward and kind of letting the external world melt away is called pratyahara. I think I've spoken to this at least once before already this year. But this is an incredible kind of practice and highly suggested, especially in Ayurvedic practices and techniques, because anytime that our senses are directed outwards, searching the external world for pleasure or information or whatever it may be, we're actually depleting our life force, our prana. And so we are slowly kind of chipping away at our vitality, our health and well-being, and being able to redirect our awareness inward to take part in pratyahara allows us to revitalize ourselves, to calm our nervous systems, to reestablish this vitality, our immune function, and the sense of rest and restoration. So the practice of pratyahara is the fifth limb in the eightfold path of yoga, the Ashtanga system. And again, using pratyahara comes in different ways. It can be through a particular type of practice. It can be through eating locally and seasonally, the use of herbal medicines, nervines and tonics, so things like that. Some of my favorite practices in pratyahara are yoga nidra, restorative yoga, as well as abhyanga, so oiling the body, whether it's just oiling your hands and feet prior to bed, or whether it's a full body oiling. All of these are very restorative. They're directing the senses inward, and also relate to what is called ojas, O-J-A-S. Ojas is related to the element of water. It is responsible for immune function, our vitality. It's this sense of juiciness or lubrication in our life. If you've ever used or heard the expression, my nerves are frazzled, this sense of feeling kind of like dry and really on edge, that signifies low ojas, a low kind of lubrication. Your nerves are quite literally lubricated. They need this barrier of lubrication to be able to function optimally, and to allow the nervous system to be in this state of kind of like homeostasis. And so when we're feeling frazzled or dry or ojas is low, then even the smallest thing can feel very intense for our nervous system. And so making sure that we're replenishing, supporting, building ojas through these practices allows us to keep this sense of groundedness, but also this sense of health, remembering that ojas is related to our immune system, immune function, being able to lubricate the nervous system and to feel grounded. And so again, kind of moving back into this idea of stillness, of pratyahara, finding that stillness, whether it's through a meditation practice, yoga nidra, restorative yoga, a quieter, slower, movement-based practice, this stillness allows us to truly know what it is that we seek, that we desire, as opposed to maybe some of these messages that we're accumulating from the external world that often tell us this is what makes us worthy or valuable. This is what we need to do. This is what we need to have, to collect. These are the people that we need to be around. Things like that aren't necessarily what really allow us to feel that divine part of ourselves, to relate, to connect to that self, that soul, that divinity within. So reducing our sensory input helps us come to that place of stillness and clarity, to be fully present and to experience that divine part of ourselves. So when we are working against the cycles, the natural rhythms of our life, when we're keeping lights on all day and all night, and we're giving the body a false sense of daylight, not allowing ourselves optimal sleep and restoration at night. Again, eating when the body is not ready to receive food, when the digestive system's not ready to digest anything that we're taking in. This all creates ama, these blocks, whether they're mental, physical, emotional. It depletes our prana, our vitality, as well as our ojas, our life force. And it is working against our dharma. It's working against that cosmic order or alignment with nature, which are also other translations of the word dharma. So it's adharmic. And living against dharma creates dis-ease in, again, mind, body, and spirit. And so I want to lean back into this idea of ojas for just a moment. Ojas, I mentioned earlier, can be supported and nurtured through rest practices, restorative yoga, yoga nidra. Pratyahara is a huge part of establishing ojas. It is similar to an oil lamp. We can think about ojas as the oil, the fuel in the lamp. And without this oil, this fluid, the lamp could not be lit. It would not shine bright. There's no flame available. There's no heat that is emerging from that light. And so when we view ourselves as this, quote, oil lamp, the oil, this ojas, is our fuel. It's our vitality. And without this oil, we can't have that spark of creativity that's related to kama, to pleasure, to desire, to creation itself. And we can't shine our light outward, that reflection of the divine outward. So it becomes dull or invisible almost. And so we have to remember that it's important to, we could say, fill our own cup, to make sure that we're able to take care of others, to fill other people's cups, to fulfill our responsibilities here, our dharma, and even to seek that artha, that means or wealth or the tools that we need to help us fulfill our responsibilities. Ojas is also related to, last month we focused on the fourth chakra, the area of the heart. Pleasure, kama, is often related to this space in the body, but also the second chakra, the area of the sacrum, the area of kind of the reproductive organs. Just a little bit about this area. Often if you're looking, and there's different chakra systems depending on the lineage you're studying. I'm offering what's coming from the tantric lineage. So this may vary from what you're familiar with, but often the color associated with this area of the body is orange. The element is water. It is fluid. It's feminine in nature, lunar in nature. It's cool and calming, often associated with creativity, whether it's art or creation of a life form. Desire, confidence. This area in Sanskrit, this chakra in Sanskrit, is called svadhisthana. And when we break down this word into its root parts, sva, self, svad, it's to taste with pleasure or to enjoy. Adhisthana is established. So svadhisthana is established in the self. So rooted in the self. And again, associated with the water element. Again, ojas is associated with the water element, this lubrication. Water is affiliated with the moon, the lunar energies, this feminine quality, also our emotions. And so when we're looking at this in relation to Ayurveda and the five senses, water is related to the sense of taste. And we often sense pleasure when we taste something. We often desire to taste a certain flavor or a certain food. So see kind of all these connections here. And then lastly, what I would like to kind of touch on is I like to offer a connection or correlation to a particular goddess energy when we explore the puruṣārtha. And so this month, this puruṣārtha of Kama, the goddess that kind of struck me as being appropriate to speak to is the goddess Lalita Tripura Sundari. And I mentioned this, I think, a couple months ago when I was offering the goddess Lakshmi for our Artha segment, that I am taking a lot of what I'm sharing with you here from Sally Kempton's Awakening Shakti book. So this particular goddess, Lalita Tripura Sundari, she is often called the goddess of erotic spirituality. She is the energy that empowers your longing for spiritual fulfillment. When we look at her name, the name means the charming beauty of the three worlds. What are the three worlds? Tripura, the three worlds of waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, as well as the physical, subtle, and causal bodies. These are the three worlds. Sundari means divine beauty, and Lalita, the root word of Lalita is Lila, which means to play. And so when we think of play, we think of pleasure. It's pleasurable to play. To even watch others being in a state of play is pleasurable. So, just offering kind of a little quote from Awakening Shakti from Ananda Lahari. You are the consciousness, ether, air, fire, water, and earth. You are the universe, O Mother, and appear before us as exquisite happiness. So that ether, air, fire, water, and earth, these are the five elements. Lalita Tripura Sundari, associated with the five elements, this merging of these Ayurvedic concepts with this particular goddess energy. She embodies desire as the universal creative force. Without desire, none of us would be here today. The universe would not be here, would not have come into existence without desire. The universe was consciousness's desire to experience itself. Therefore, the universe was created. So we can relate this particular goddess, Lalita, to the Greek god Eros. There's some similarities, but quite often in Vedic text and this particular form of thought, it's a much more vast explanation and idea of this goddess. So again, the Greek god Eros, he is the divine force of life itself, and it's that lively, alluring part of life. So we can think of Lalita as the scent of flowers that draws bees, or the channeling of desires into spiritual aspirations. So it's that drawing, we're drawn to something, that particular desire, that particular sense of pleasure, but then it's transformed into this sweetness, this nectar, this spiritual experience or knowing that we have. This was one of my favorite passages in Awakening Shakti about Lalita Tripura Sundari. Shankara describes Lalita as the one who dwells in a forest of bliss, whose ornaments glisten with gold, who wears a great pearl necklace, whose mouth rolls with wine, who is the giver of great compassion, and who has wide eyes and wanders free. How beautiful a description. So lastly, she just transforms our inner sense of duality and alienation into the most radical form of inner wholeness, integrating the sensual and the spiritual. So our five senses are here, yes, to experience pleasure, but also to remind us of that place within us that is unchanging, that is divine. She cleanses the doors of your perception so that you can see the world as it truly is, shimmering with beauty. She reminds you of the divine presence in all things and in self. So beautiful goddess for this particular exploration of kama, pleasure, desire, that true pleasure that we seek, that true desire and longing is actually to know that place within us that is unchanging. We seek what already is within us. And so as I close out this month's bhavana, I hope you take that with you. Maybe contemplate the recent desires that you've had come up. And how does that relate to that deeper desire, maybe unspoken desire within you to know that divine part of you? As always, thank you so much for joining. If you have any questions, comments, feedback, I would love to hear from you. You're welcome to shoot me an email, to respond to the newsletter if you receive the newsletter. And if you're interested in the newsletter and you're not signed up already, certainly sign up. I send 2 out per month unless I'm hosting an event, and you might receive 1 or 2 more. And so you get your monthly bhavana with a playlist, this bhavana chat. And then I send an additional one towards the end of the month with a recipe and a ritual that you are able to embody and incorporate into your daily lives. So thank you again. I hope you enjoy the rest of your month, and we'll see you soon.